Hey, hey, what's going on, guys? It's me, Jay. Exciting news to announce now as we found out the second inductee to the WWE Hall of Fame in 2026 this year for WrestleMania weekend on the 20th of April. Mid-April is WrestleMania weekend, WrestleMania Las Vegas. We found out who is the second inductee to the WWE Hall of Fame this year, and it is none other than Demolition. Axe and Smash are finally going into the WWE Hall of Fame. I couldn't find a fucking picture of them for the thumbnail, but I'll work on it. Guys, yeah, Axe and Smash are finally going in. This is crazy because the Legion of Doom went in 2011, and now Demolition is going in. If you grew up a wrestling fan in the late 1980s, you guys know there was two teams that were dominant. There was the Road Warriors that were dominant in Jim Crockett Promotions and in the AWA and in every other organization outside of the WWF. And then there was Demolition that was dominant within the WWF. Demolition, of course, consisting of Bill Eadie and Barry Darsow. Bill Eadie was already a veteran professional wrestler when the team was formed in 1987. And Barry Darsow had previously been in Jim Crockett Promotions as well as Mid-South as the Russian character Crusher Khrushchev, an American who was a Russian sympathizer. Barry Darsow is from that area in Robbinsdale, Minnesota, grew up with the likes of Nikita Koloff, of Rick Rude, of Kurt Hennig, the whole Minnesota crew of boys. And Bill Eadie was the mass superstar prior to that. But see, what happened was in wrestling, in the early 1980s, the Road Warriors became massively popular. And every other organization, every other territory wanted to copy the Road Warriors, the success that they were having first in Georgia Championship Wrestling and then moving on into like the AWA and then Jim Crockett Promotions. So other companies came up with their own versions, the Blade Runners, Ultimate Warrior and Sting. Scott Hall was in the team with Danny Spivey, American Starship, in Jim Crockett Promotions before the Road Warriors came over there, right? That Dusty put together. And like big power teams inspired by the movie, the Mad Max movie, right? Ole Anderson came up with this concept when he was booking for Georgia Championship Wrestling. It got over with the Road Warriors, and everybody wanted to do that too. And Barry Darsow, like I said, he had a connection with the Road Warriors because he was from Minnesota as well. He worked as a bouncer in Grandma B's, that same bar that the Road Warriors, Animal and Hawk worked at. But he happened to leave Jim Crockett Promotions as Crusher Khrushchev, as part of the Russians with Ivan and Nikita Koloff, and go to WWF. And when they debuted them in WWF in January of 1987, their manager is initially Luscious Johnny Valiant of the Valiant Brothers. Over time, they get Mr. Fuji as their manager, right? Mr. Fuji becomes their manager and their heels. That's when they win their first tag team championships at WrestleMania 4 from Strikeforce, Rick Martel and Tito Santana. But then Mr. Fuji turns on them because the Powers of Pain, Warlord and Barbarian, they come over from Jim Crockett Promotions and they have a feud with Axe and Smash. And Mr. Fuji, they do the first double turn at the Survivor Series that year, where Mr. Fuji turns on Demolition and he goes with the Powers of Pain, and they start to call him Fuge the Stooge. They win the tag team belts back from the Powers of Pain, and then at WrestleMania 6, in what was like Andre the Giant's last match, Andre the Giant and Haku, the Colossal Connection, managed by Bobby Heenan, taking on Demolition. Demolition wins the tag team championships for the third time in 1990 at WrestleMania 6. But then what happens? Remember, Animal and Hawk, they have problems at Jim Crock Promotions. The buyout of Jim Crock Promotions by Ted Turner to become WCW. They don't like Jim Herd, so they sign a contract to go to the WWF. They come to the WWF in 1990. So now you know Demolition has to turn heel because we're finally going to get the dream match. You know, all the wrestling magazines will always compare the Road Warriors to Demolition, the Road Warriors to Demolition. Who was the better tag team? The Road Warriors in Jim Crock Promotions or Demolition in the WWF? But finally, the Road Warriors are coming to the WWF as the Legion of Doom, and we're going to get that clash, or so we thought. But Bill Eadie, right, he gets injured. I mean, he develops some allergies, right? Shellfish allergies, right? Allergic reaction. So they take him out of the team and they put in Crush, Bryan Adams. Now this is the second change for Demolition because originally when Demolition came in the 1987, Moondog Rex or Randy Colley was the original member. Bill Eadie wasn't in it. They put Bill Eadie in it later, right? But the second change is in 1990 with Crush. So now there's three members of Demolition. There's Axe, Smash, and Crush. And they develop a sort of free bird rule type thing when they go against the Hart Foundation at SummerSlam 1990 for the tag team championships. And the Hart Foundation, with help from the Legion of Doom, defeat Demolition. And then, you know, pretty much the team, you know, breaks up. They have one match against the two Japanese wrestlers at WrestleMania 7. And that's it. You know, they go their separate ways. Barry Darsow becomes eventually the Repo Man. He gets repackaged, and Crush becomes, you know, 2 years later becomes Kona Crush. And Repo Man and Kona Crush actually have a match at SummerSlam 1992. But and Bill Eadie goes back to the independent circuit. And then we don't really hear for anything much from Demolition after that. Barry Darsow, you know, in 1995, he goes to WCW. He becomes the Blacktop Bully. He has the match with Dustin Rhodes, the Road match. And Uncensored 95 gets fired. And, you know, that's it for that team, right? And then they go on to sue the WWF. And for years, they were on the outs with the WWF because of this lawsuit. And everybody's like, you're putting in the Road Warriors, but your team, your version of the Road Warriors, the greatest tag team in WWF history. People say the Road Warriors are the greatest tag team in wrestling history, and I got to agree with them. But as far as just the WWF alone, like WWF just by itself, in just the history of the WWF, it has to be Demolition. Demolition are our version. If you were a WWF kid like me, you thought automatically that Demolition was the best team in professional wrestling. And other kids that would watch the NWA, right, they would say, no, the Road Warriors are the real version. So it's just like the singles version, right? The singles version, you had Ric Flair and you had Hulk Hogan. Ric Flair on one channel, Hulk Hogan on another channel. But with the tag team version was just the same thing. But just like that, when Ric Flair came to WWF and he was going to have the match with Hulk Hogan, WWF botched it. The same thing they did here. They really never did a Road Warriors and Demolition feud. They did a better job with Powers of Pain and Road Warriors in Jim Crock Promotions and Powers of Pain and Demolition in WWF. They really never did the true Road Warriors Demolition feud. But congratulations to Demolition. I love their theme song. We're Demolition. I forgot the words. But, you know, their theme song was awesome. And like I said, they were basically the WWF version of the Road Warriors until the Road Warriors actually came to the WWF. But anyway, guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. That's it, man. Demolition. You got AJ Styles going in, and you got Demolition going in. Two inductees thus far. And Undertaker gave them the news that they'll be going in. So AJ Styles and Axe and Smash. Congratulations to Axe and Smash of Demolition. I'm glad that they could finally put this beef behind them that they've had with the WWF forever, because Bret Hart complained of why they aren't in the Hall of Fame. Again, the Hart Foundation and Demolition, they had their battles, like SummerSlam 1990 comes to mind. Was a great match, which began Bret Hart's string of great SummerSlam matches that lasted basically throughout his whole career. So what's Undertaker now? The guy that delivers. He's like the ambassador for WWE, delivers the news that guys are going into the Hall of Fame. So we got to see who else is going to be inducted. So far, Demolition and AJ Styles, that looks like a pretty good class to me, guys. Peace.